and what the priorities and important things are in terms of leadership for us here in the Eastern Cape. So, can I hand over to you, please?
I'm not going to blame it on load shedding, but in actual fact, it was load shedding. They've been here 10 minutes. Hi, John. Hi.
Do you need anything?
No, I don't. Colleagues, it's not the first time that one is honored to be part of this august initiative by ALSEF, and therefore I greet everyone over the table and over there, and thanks to you, John, and to all my colleagues that are here. Firstly, I must apologize on behalf of our Superintendent General, as most of us know that he's actually abroad, and it is a pre-arranged commitment which he could not miss, and he asked me to come and share with this audience here in relation to the challenges we're facing in Eastern Cape and the strategic orientation that would probably form a basis of development of systems to respond to those challenges or to try and mitigate the impact thereof. It's not an easy topic, it's a very broad topic, and it is a topic that has got experts in various fields, not in just one field, because it's pretty broad. But I'll try my utmost best to do a high level, or to share high level insights into what we have, from where we are, have discovered to be what we can do something about. I do know that from where you're sitting, there are researchers here, and who obviously have got different views and perspectives on some of the issues that we challenge with. The first thing I wanted to share with everyone here is that when we look back, we're not taking it, of course, 20 years is a benchmark of the new democratic government that is in place, but the health system has existed long time before 1994. I think we all know that. And most of the people who are managing the health system actually were products of a pre-1994 era. And that's most of you. I see the younger ones here who are less than 20 years, who are privileged, who have got a lot to learn from this. The fundamental of health systems in South Africa in the past was premised on very, very narrow parameters. Race was one of them. The other one was obviously regional entities which existed in South Africa. Some of them obviously were various homelands. And it was also premised on the role of the army, which is very interesting. The army was playing quite a significant role in the health system during the apartheid era. And with the ushering of the new government, some shortcomings were identified, but unfortunately, most of them were limited to political arena. And an opportunity was missed to actually identify the parameters that drive all health systems in any country. With regard to deracialization of institutions, of course, that happened. And a lot of energy was directed to that. An opportunity to interrogate seriously the shortcomings, beyond political shortcomings, of the old health system, unfortunately not given adequate attention. I will mention a few. The health system in South Africa is largely premised on disease burdens. And I think most of us here, from strat plan sessions, the preamble of the strat plan sessions is usually around the disease burden. And secondly, there's also a buzzword which has become a popular word, is the issue of affordability, just the economics of health. And these two elements, up to now, even in our province, have dominated a very important parameter within the paradigm of healthcare that is missing. That is the actual citizen and the role of a citizen that you are endeavoring to serve. That has been, before 1994, up to this point. As a result of that, the health system found its refinement. I repeat, it tried for the last 20 years to refine itself and missed an opportunity to redefine itself. Now, colleagues, I will take advantage of this audience and put this challenge on all of you that the time is now to redefine the health system, because that's where all the formulas of success and good outputs are going to emanate from. In redefining now, not refining, in redefining, we must put the citizen at the center of the system, and all planning must happen around a health citizen of the country without even undermining or making assumptions about expectations, about what they expect out of the health system. And also, not even disenfranchising them in terms of their input in the design of the new health system that I am pretty sure now, after 20 years, we're able to try and redefine and not refine. The second part to it is other broader political, societal, and economic issues, and some of them demographic, that mark the juncture at which we are now for relooking at the health system. The first one is the change of the disease burden mix. I think all of us, we know that the focus has been on diseases of poverty for a long time. And I must say, TB is still the #1 killer, and I must really emphasize that. But the diseases of poverty have been the area of focus and resource allocation. Finance gurus are here. But there is obviously a shift now that the disease mix is beginning to change. I'm pretty sure other people, researchers are here, they can relate it to urbanization or whatever. We are now beginning to confront the diseases of excess. It is strange to talk about excess in a poor country, but the diseases of excess are now beginning to emerge. They are bringing in a very important element and a high risk element to our health system, because the cost of intervention is extremely high. I think we all know that. Most TB patients are treated at home, isn't it? And they are treated at the workplace. They continue to be productive. But patients who have heart attacks, they end up being your cath labs. They end up staying long in hospitals. They end up being flown by helicopters between various, sites of experts. I think we all know that, just to take that as an example. So that is going to have a very serious effect on the cost of healthcare in the system. Albeit maybe at about 25% at the moment, but the impact on cost is going to be monumental. So the health system has to find a way of responding to that. Again, this was a missed opportunity, because again, we did not elevate health promotion at the time when it matters most in our health system, to take health promotion as a top priority so that we prevent people, we deal with obesity, we deal with all other conditions, that may actually have this kind of a negative knock-on effect on the cost of healthcare in South Africa. That is the second part of the weaknesses that were picked up in the health system. The third element is what scares everybody, including myself. It is the pace of digitization. Now, I see a lot of you are still carrying a lot of files, but I'm pretty sure if I had your daughters in this class, they wouldn't be carrying files. They would be carrying iPads and tablets. Now, that is now another area that is a serious hallmark of the transformation that is post 20 years to the new health system that we actually trying to rederive and rebuild. It is not a threat, but depending how we position ourselves to it, it may well become a threat. It is not a risk, it may become an opportunity, depending how we respond to the issue of digital migration. I think at SABC they talk of digital migration, isn't it? And remember, it applies because it's a societal issue. Again, the health system must learn from the past, not resist the dynamics in society that must redefine the health system in the country. You cannot ignore that the society is rapidly digitizing how they are doing business. And then you do not translate that into how you're remodeling your health system in South Africa and in Eastern Cape. This is the time, if we miss this one, we're going to be in big trouble. Most of us are already in big trouble. I'll share one example, John. That was 20, without revealing my age, that was 20-something years ago. I was a junior medical officer at All Saints Hospital. I was on call on a Sunday. Working in a rural area, coming out of our health system, schools, and obviously the health system in South Africa then. A doctor was a very dominant player in the health system, remember, in the whole clinical space. And the nurse was the second most dominant player. Guess who was the least dominant? It's an easy guess. It was, again, the patient. So that's a background that produced me. Until one afternoon, there were two German students who were doing some work, community work in my village. They were there for a month. They got a bout of diarrhea. And it was me who was actually on call at all times. So they were brought in by the people from the village, put up a drip nest, the usual, isn't it? Come in, what's wrong, it's diarrhea, blah, blah, blah. Touch here and there. Don't even greet a patient sometimes because it's busy. And you put up a drip and you order some medication without sharing a word with the patient. For the first time, the nurses came over to the other consultant. Doctor, the patient wants to talk to you. And obviously, boldly, in my white coat, walked down the corridor into the room, had a chat. Is there anything that I can help you with? But doctor, you never even told us what is wrong with us, number one. Number two, you're putting up a drip without asking for permission from me. Thirdly, to make it even worse, you're putting a drug here. You're not even telling me what it is and what the side effects could be. That was an eye-opening encounter for me. Because remember, they come from Germany. Now they were treated in South Africa for the first time. That is when I started respecting the power and the role of the patient in the whole clinical space. And I think the health system, once again, must recognize that power. How people want us to respond to their situation, whether it's related to trauma, whether it's related to childbirth, how do they want us to respond? And we must begin now in designing our strat plans, and our operational plan, take their input into account. Interestingly, we are very good in terms of capturing their feedback as complaints. We even have a system here. We even have a call center. It used to be called complaint center. We are able to put up an infrastructure that when we have ignored everything and we've done the business, we then ask them, how do you feel about it? Do you have any complaints? And now we need to switch it around, begin to use that to interact with the citizenry in designing the new health system. The fourth one that we have obviously ignored, despite of it being onerous in the face of the health system, is the fact that South Africa shares borders with a lot of countries. I'm sure that people know geography better than me. They can start from Namibia, this side, Botswana, Malawi, all the way to Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Swaziland, and then we share the border with the rest of the world through our ocean. And remember, we share the border with the rest of the world. So we also did not take that into account seriously enough to build it into the model of designing our health system. And we always, again, strangely, more than ready to direct resources to react. I think the Ebola one is the latest. We had to organize multiple seminars to tell people what is an Ebola virus. I think we all know that. On TV and seminars, people were put together teams because we never knew what an Ebola virus is. And once we've done that, we don't even know what's the other viruses that exist in those countries who can actually cause an outbreak. Believe you me, we know the Ebola. We don't know all other hemorrhagic fevers or viruses that can potentially cause an outbreak. Similarly, that we know cholera, and the Vibrio here, that it can actually cause an outbreak in South Africa. We know. But because we share borders with these countries, we should know there should be an health intelligence system that actually works and actually in the SADC area on all other countries that we share physical borders with, to be able to build that into our health system. So that's an area that we have ignored. And by this time around, I'm pretty sure we'll want to get it right. Coming closer to home, I'll restrict this to just two aspects. Otherwise, we'll have the whole day discussion here. The other area is the health system itself now having, being managed by ourselves. But we realize that it has some deficiencies. The first one is that the emphasis is on organizational metrics. I'm pretty sure all of you, some of them manage clinics and they manage hospitals. When you talk about the hospital report, we talk about the average length of stay. We talk about bed utilization rate, We talk about cost of PPE, That's a traditional, we've got a template that tells us exactly, my troops, how to respond in a hospital performance, And that obviously usually satisfies the SG that I'm representing here. Again, we think that's a serious deficiency. Guess what? In the first instance, we ignored the patient. In this instance, it is the worker, the employee, that is not being taken care of by the health system in the performance matrix. Now, if the performance matrix don't take into account the employee matrix, again, we're going to have a problem that we find it difficult. But we have a way in the department we're very good at articulating issues, especially the one that really kills me is the one of staff attitude. You know that. It is one of the 6 ministerial priorities. It's articulated as a staff attitude. But if you actually drill down, research students here, what are the issues behind the negative staff attitude? You will realize it's an expression of a shortcoming in the system because we ignored the employee in the design and in the modeling of our services. Only thing we know is maternity leave, sick leave, annual leave. But with the modern workforce, I think the issues of employee metrics must be taken into account. We must know at any given day whether employees are happy with the way we do things. It must not take a union. It must take a model to actually be able to lift that my employees are unhappy. We must at all times, you must know the health profile of our workforce. You ask me in my own hospital, how many people have diabetes mellitus? In a hospital that I'm managing, it may sound ridiculous to somebody who's managing a mine because he knows even the weights and how much weight they have, the people working the mine. That person is not medical, but they tend to know more about their workforce than we do within the health system. Now, I don't know at Cecilia Makiwane, while I'm standing here, how many of my 3,000 workforce have got diabetes? What is the prevalence of hypertension within the workforce? These are the kinds of metrics I'm saying. These are employee metrics we cannot ignore anymore because they have a direct impact on the performance of the health system. So I'm just citing a few examples. There could be a lot more, but sometimes what we then do, we establish a wellness program, sometimes called a wellness system, wellness clinic, yeah? But what it has been doing in my own institution, embarrassingly, that's where people who cannot be managed by their supervisors are sent to. If you're a drunkard and this guy has tried to stop it for a long time, they drag you to the wellness clinic. Imagine, look at that contradiction. This person have given up. Then that's a way of starting a disciplinary process. That's how even the little that we have misinterpreted and actually apply it so inappropriately. And it doesn't even talk to the importance of employee metrics in what we do. So colleagues, I think among many other things that we can share, given enough time, there are a lot of things in the health system that we have identified. The last one, out of the many, is the most controversial one, the actual issue of determining the cost of healthcare. Now, the system itself, because of the poor design, you are unable as a department to actually confidently, apprehend and understand and comprehend the actual cost elements that run within the system. If you go to one hospital, you ask for a cost of doing a cesarean section. Give you a figure, most people will say, I don't know, until they open a little book that's called UPFS rates. Now, that's finance, but the actual service itself, when it's done there, it's usually done either far above those UPFS rates because of various metrics that apply to costing, like staffing norms and all those kinds of things. So those are the kinds of things that the health system itself is beginning to struggle with. Obviously, we all know that there is work being done by Competition Commission with the big 4 medical groups in South Africa, Netcare, Mediclinic. That's all an attempt, but I think we ourselves in public sector, because we use taxpayers' money, therefore we must be able to account to the public in the most practical and possible accurate way in terms of exactly how much does it cost us. Because of this omission, we have found ourselves at all times, at any given time, asking for more money and actually doing less than the previous period, but asking for more money. That is now beginning to feel or to cause a whole lot of weight on the health system, and is beginning to retard even transformation. And we must also agree, colleagues, that the next area, when we talk about workforce, we're no longer talking about ourselves. We're talking about the next generation. So when you design a health system now, I'm designing for my own daughter who may be working there as a nurse or as a porter. This next generation have got a very different orientation and a slightly advanced, if advanced, value system or value orientation. They are more globalized. They are on Facebook with a friend in UK, in America, everywhere. They know exactly, they're more global citizens than you are. So they know exactly how the health system works in America. They know flexi time before you even start putting it on paper and submitting to SG. So they're not going to offer the health system what you are offering. They have got other needs that will compete fairly on their moral perspective with the duties that have to be performed by the health system. I'm expecting my doctors in 10 years' time to say, look, I'm taking afternoon off to play golf. Is the health system ready to accommodate that kind of workforce? They say, look, I'll come and work for you provided I get my Wednesday afternoon to play golf because I can't afford to miss it. You know, you have a moral standing that's different when you look at golf and sickness. But theirs is going to change a little bit. It's already changing. You know it right in your own house. You know, they'll go to a friend's party, but they must make sure the church finishes early so that they can be able to attend to other areas of need. I think we all know that. Yeah. So the health system must begin to position itself for that very serious dynamic which is coming through. And they are not going to restrict themselves. If they want to have a work holiday in Mozambique, is the health system able to port a doctor from South Africa to go and work in Mozambique while he's also having holiday for 3 months? You know, the health system must begin to look at those. Again, if you don't position yourself properly, they become risks. But if you start preparing for them, they become opportunities. Because you'll have another doctor coming from England wanting to come and spend summer here. Is the health system getting ready to embrace that doctor? To come, when they come for summer holidays, they don't have to bask in the beach the whole day. They want to do some work. So the health system must begin to look at all the other global and international elements that are going to impact on the health system in South Africa. Colleagues, it's a very long topic. I will limit myself to just that part of the discussion in terms of the health systems in South Africa. Those are the kinds of challenges. I'm only sharing challenges. It's not that there are no successes. There are a lot of opportunities as well that the health system in South Africa is actually ready to take advantage of. But I wanted to limit myself to just the area of challenges that we're seeing in the horizon. That, you know, cohorts of this nature would be of great, you know, partnership to the department in terms of also looking at these things from a research perspective or from an interaction and share experiences, because you are exposed to experts that come from all over the world. John, with those short remarks, I would love to thank you for the opportunity on behalf of the SG, and I hope that the contribution, and SG made a commitment that is available to talk to you again in future when he comes back and becomes available. And thank you very much. Thank you.
I have is, you talked about Eastern Cape. Is there big differences between all of the different provinces, and is there a way that it could be more efficiently done by linking some of the things in each of the provinces?
Yes, Barry. Now, Barry is moving to real opportunities that exist. We are managing a single health system. We're not a federal state. I know exactly why you're asking that question. We're not a federal state, but the way we have modeled the health system is highly federalized. You know, sometimes to the detriment of both the department in terms of cost and inconvenience to the patient and the potential risk, you know, of whatever that may be associated with the movement of patients a lot in between. There are a number of deficiencies. Again, number one, we don't have a single health database for the clients, again, that we're servicing. But again, the department is in interaction with the Department of Home Affairs, because that's one department that has got a database of all health citizens, or of all citizens of the country. Now, we are doing that. We want to pilot here in Eastern Cape first. So the Office of the Premier is at an advanced stage in getting that population, we call it a population dump, but I think it's a population register that they can then use. However, that's not enough. That's purely demographic. That needs to be associated with disease trends that happen across the country. So it assists us in terms of planning the health interventions. As it is now, we have a bit of competition, unhealthy competition between provinces. And to a large extent, rather very wasteful expenditure in relation to how we do things. I'll give you a very good example how we are dealing with cross-border issues. I think in OR Tambo, all of you guys know, OR Tambo and KZN, that's KwaZulu-Natal, these are the two coastal provinces, Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal and Western Cape. Now, the distance between, these are very vast provinces, very, very vast. Now, the distance between what you would consider a center of Eastern Cape and the center of KwaZulu-Natal is almost 800 to 900 kilometers. Now, you know what the implications are for patients in between that. Now, if the system is not seamless, it's a logistical nightmare for patients to know exactly where to go to get the better service. Sometimes if you're sitting in the middle in Lusikisiki and Bizana, you know, and you have a certain problem, you think that, look, Mthatha is 350 kilometers, just like KZN is also 360 kilometers away. But it now sometimes left to that patient who's not even informed about what service here to choose which side to go. And quite often, that dilemma sits with the patient until it's an emergency. I think we all know that. Now, when it becomes an emergency, it ends up being a disaster. Just purely movement of patients in between these two provinces. And the third impact of it is that because there's poor coordination, there is no concerted effort to say, we are one country, we can't have more than 3 hospitals that can do heart transplants. Who should be doing heart transplants? You know, there is an effort, obviously, to the modernization of tertiary services to do that, but it's still at a very early age, 20 years on. So there are systemic issues that need to be dealt with, both in terms of database and sharing information, because citizens move between the provinces at free will because of migrant labor system or opportunities that they see elsewhere. They are free to move, and therefore they should get equitable treatment wherever they go. But sometimes because their file is sitting here with me and my Kiwanuret friend, it hampers another colleague in Cape Town who wants to assist the same patient. There are still those problems that we have, that we're sitting with. We've recognized them. They're not going to be solved overnight, but we need to take the first step in terms of making sure we actually harmonize the health system in the country. That's related to also to broadband, to technology, connectivity issues. They all kick in, and sometimes, instead of being seen as challenges, they are seen as obstacles. And that sort of shuts down the door, because IT people will tell you they need 5 billion to solve this, when in actual fact it could be done for 5 million. You know, the other economic dynamics and interest they kick in. That's basically where we are now in relation to that kind. We're still at a very primitive stage, but we need to bring that system together. Because if we are going to function in the framework of an NHI, there's a lot of work we still have to do beyond just building and improving infrastructure. Thank you very much. And I think, colleagues, should I ask myself, do you have questions or answers?
Let me just check whether lunch is ready and we can have an early lunch. We can set it good.
Dr. Komlasha.
On behalf of the School of Health Sciences, we want to say with this little token, thank you so much. We know that the notification was very short, but you managed to honor this request. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's make a start. We've been talking this morning a lot about different aspects of leadership and how they all fit together and how we can see the different forms of leadership. I think if you begin to look at what Prof. Takati was talking about, all those different styles and different theories of leadership, if you view them a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, you can see that they would all fit together under different situations. What we're doing now is we're looking at meta-leadership. Meta-leadership is really, meta is about an overarching leadership, okay? So we're beginning to think about putting all of these ideas together and looking at how they can be used in a bigger perspective, in a larger perspective, maybe a wider perspective, and beginning to say, how does meta leadership, what does it actually mean? It means that there's an overarching form of leadership which is beginning to make us look wider at the macro picture, the big picture, and beginning to say, look, let's see where we go with this whole process of leadership. Now we've got you've already been through this. You've identified lots of different things in terms of leadership, but what do you think is the basic principle of leadership? What is leadership?
What are some terms you would use? What are terms of leadership?
I was going to talk about the same thing, providing direction and setting basis for moving forward.
Okay, yeah. Anything else?
I think also leadership is to add value and influence people to do something.
Okay.
As well as coaching and mentoring.
Mentoring and what?
Coaching.
Leadership, including towards my colleague may have said, also it includes giving guidance towards a common goal, set goal.
Leadership is to ensure that things are done by the relevant people is to ensure that things are done by the relevant people according to the agreed goals and objectives at a certain sector.
Thank you.
Provision of support and guidance towards the reaching a common goal.
Okay, thank you. You see that most of these things are things that we actually do, aren't they? They're all really activities that as leaders we would be expected to do these sort of things. Okay? So we want to look not just at that, but we're looking at what's the mindset of the leader? What sort of mindset do you have when you're leading these people? We're looking at the skill set, so what steps and what direction are we going in, similar to what you're saying there. But we're also looking at the daily problem solving, whether it's small or large, okay? So you've got here the implications of this so that some of these things would be covered, but we want to look at all of the areas and try and draw them together under one big heading. So basically leadership is people follow you, okay? If you have no followers, you're not a leader, okay? But the easy bit is the following. The difficult bit is the people, okay? How do you influence them to follow? And what do you do with them? How do you generate that excitement, that interest, that possibility of what they can achieve. And the other problem is us, you. Okay? We're also a problem. Not a desperate problem, but we are in quite a difficult position because we're asking people to follow us. I guess the first question we should ask ourselves, would you follow you? Okay? Would you follow you? If you were the boss, would you follow you? So it's an important question because at the end of the day, you're it. You're the boss, you're the leader, you're the one that they're looking to and hoping that you'll be able to lead them in the right direction at the right time with the right purpose, and so that you can be up ahead of them and leading them. I had a boss who had this notice up in his office. He said, "There they go, and I must follow, for I am their leader." Okay? So sometimes we get it the wrong way around. We want the crowd to lead us, to influence us. Well, sometimes that works if we're using a democratic style of leadership. But even then, you shouldn't be following. You should be part of the group or the team, so that democracy involves the whole group. So when we begin to look at leadership analysis, first we need to look at us, look at you and your leadership. Okay? Then you begin to look around and you begin to say, okay, who is a great leader? You were asked earlier about this and you came up with various names of people who you considered to be a great leader. And then ask yourself, who's a lousy leader? Okay? Who's not good? Who's not a great leader? And someone that we would not want to follow unless we're forced to. Okay? So you begin to look at yourself and you begin to say, okay, how do I compare with these other people? What is it that I've got that they haven't got? How can I begin to step into this great leadership position? And so we begin to identify where we are in that leadership thing, okay? So just begin to have a quick chat amongst yourselves, okay? And just ask yourselves really, how am I as a leader? It's going to require you to be a bit open with your colleagues here. But how do you value yourself as a leader? What do you think you do well? Maybe some things that you'd like to change. Okay? Just have a quick chat. I'm not going to ask you to give us feedback. This is just amongst yourselves. Okay? Just take 2 or 3 minutes to do that. And one of the important things is that they have the courage to surround themselves with great people. Now, what often happens is that a leader, when they have great people under them, they begin to feel vulnerable. I don't know whether you've seen that cartoon of these people climbing up the ladder, and when it says, when you look down, all you see is brains, and when you look up, all you see is bums. Okay, and that's often the way that we think about our bosses, isn't it? But if a boss is confident and able to be a good leader, they are willing to surround themselves with people who are very capable. I remember hearing an interview with a British guy who was taking over a company in the UK, and they said to him, "You've got this huge responsibility, what are you going to do now?" He said, "My first action is going to be, I'm going to recruit 29 people who are more competent than I am." Now that takes a lot of courage to do, doesn't it? But you'll find that a great leader will begin to generate great followers. And they'll rely on them and depend on them and trust them completely. So you've got to learn, if you like, to put yourself out there and begin to say, you know, what do I need to do in actual fact, to cope with this area of work, with this difficulty, with this problem, who's the best person to deal with it? You're not going to be the, the master of all knowledge. You have to have the competence and the confidence to be able to delegate to other people. And sometimes to step aside and say, okay, look, you're the expert here, and I know you're a good leader. For this particular situation, I want you to lead it. I'll become part of the team. And that takes a lot of courage to do. They're consistently curious about improving their capacity to lead. It gives them sleepless nights. They go home at night and they think to themselves, how can I do it better? What can I do different tomorrow? What is the issue really here? How can I get a grasp of all that's going on? What research do I need to do? So you begin to question yourself and all these things about how can I improve my overall performance? They also cope well with uncertainty because it's the only guarantee that you have, that things are uncertain and that things are going to change. So unless you can begin to build in some self-resilience, some ability to deal with stress, then you're going to have a difficult time. They have to understand that there's a limit to how much they can control. You can't control everything. Some things are outside of your control. When the patient's going to come in, how they're going to react, how the staff are feeling that morning, all of those things are going to have to come to you, and you've got to deal with them as the problem arises. So coping with uncertainty is an important aspect of performance. Now, we usually think about leadership in terms of authority. Yeah? How much authority do you have? Who has 10? Who can say that their authority is absolute and complete? No? Not even the president has that, does he? Okay, so who's about 7? Who thinks that their authority is 7? 5? 4? 3? Help!
Hold it a minute. How many people are in this room? I'm 13, so no, everybody has 0 authority. What the hell are you doing in this room? Come on, you gotta show us. Where do you think you are on the authority scale?
Authority really comes with your position, doesn't it? Okay. You're given authority. Yeah.
I think I can put myself at 6 because if I understand it well, I look at the span of control in the work that I'm currently doing, so I will put myself at 6.
Okay, good.
I think I'm just, is it authority?
Yeah. It's authority. What do you mean, is it authority?
I'm just thinking, is it authority or is just people respecting me? Maybe that's why I'm not rating myself.
Okay. What you're talking about is influence. Okay? And there is a difference between authority and influence. Okay, with authority, you're given your position and you have a chance to exercise it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I believe if one understands it quite correctly, then most of us have got a lot of authority, just because of the position, as you said, that we are in. But as said, nobody will have a very high score of authority. Some of us definitely will have a high score of influence, because that is where the true you is actually coming out of. That is where you can have a lot of, where you actually take the lead, the other authority that comes with administration and all those other things.
And I think that, you see, what you're saying is good thinking, because what you're saying is, my influence exceeds my authority, which is really great, which begins to show that you're exhibiting the attributes of a good leader. Because if you can influence further than your authority, then you're making an impact on the organisation and on the people around you. But it's not always that easy to do. And lots of people rely on their authority. And sometimes if they see you influencing, they'll try and squash you, because their authority seems to be exceeded by your influence. And maybe we do it as well sometimes. If someone under us hasn't got the authority, we say to them, what right have you got to do this? You know, and we squash them. Whereas really they're using their influence to get things done. And if it's in support of you, you should be behind them saying, go for it, you know, get it done. So there is that. And what we're talking about here is the ability to influence beyond your authority. Okay? That's what leadership is about. It's about taking the initiative, moving the group forward, beginning to get...
I don't know what to do about this. What can you do to help? Okay?